Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the SaaS Academy podcast. Today, we're talking to Mike Manzi. He is a 5 times VP of sales. He's done over $100 million in sales under his leadership. And we talk all things sales, hiring high performers, retaining high performers, building great sales teams. We talk about the trends in outbound sales, how you can leverage AI to get ahead of the market, and then where that's going. We talk about his mission to eliminate the SDR role completely. And then we end off with unpacking how he has accrued 300,000 followers over the last 12 months. So if you're thinking about creating content or you're putting effort into creating content, it's just not hitting the way that you want it to, Mike unpacks some seriously tactical tips today to elevate your game. This is one of the most potent and tactical episodes we've done. Enjoy. Let's dive in. Good to have you on the episode and podcast, Mike. It's fun to have you here. And we got some meaty stuff for us to dig through. You have quite the background, 5-time VP of sales, closed over 100 million in deals. I'd love to just start off with, why don't you give us an overview of some of the sales teams you've built?
Yeah, I think one of the unique things about my experience is that everywhere I've been has been a different type of organization, turnarounds, startups, and everywhere has also been a variety of types of companies, meaning some are SaaS, some are enterprise, some are services, and also a variety of locations. You know, you mentioned earlier one of my experiences before we started where I was selling completely everywhere, literally, and then other places where I'm selling in super small markets. So what I've done is basically, when I began my career, I started selling all of the international trips to high school. So your Spanish teacher who took the whole school to Spain or whatever, we were slinging those. And that was old school, man. I remember we would close a deal, they'd give you a Bud Light. Like that's where we're at, right? And we were super excited to make through $30,000 a year. It was awesome. Ended up teaching English abroad, coming back and saying I wanted to just kind of get my formal sales bit under my belt, because I knew I wanted to be in sales. So I was at Career Builder for quite some time there, and was in the staffing group, sold in, did well, got promoted into a role where I was completely not ready for, honestly. And they had me basically growing their Canadian market, and then saw the team that I was just on needed a manager. So I actually went into management. And then the next few years was selling a variety of things, $300,000 a month deals for emails with companies like Darden and Southwest, as well as regular SaaS model deals of $6,000 to $100,000 selling social media, e-commerce tools, as well as time tracking. But really, we'll say like the middle bit of my career so far, where it became to really pick up was when I got into leadership. And so I worked at one company where we had a team of 4, grew it to 8. And the team was losing money. And then we ended up being so well that they actually gave me a secondary team to grow. And I think the reason that worked out was because I understood to like get a good grasp of the team and get the team culture there. But where I went too far in that role was I became the friend of everybody. And that didn't work in the long term. So I swung the complete different direction at this e-commerce company, where I then was like, I'm just here to, break next cash checks. I don't care about anybody. And it took me a long time to regain the trust of the sales team back, because I ruined it at the beginning. But we ended up like doubling revenue year over year. So there were obviously some good things there. And then at Workable was a place that I worked at where I think I really expanded quite a bit. We were a team of 6. And we were doing, I think at the time, like 500K, I want to say, in revenue. And then about two and a half years later, we were a team of 20, 25, something like that. I think I'm getting my numbers right. And we were doing about 7 million. And there it was like, how do we handle inbounds? How do we handle capacity? We had a CEO who was so intense, and just through intensity made me learn so much about trend analysis and thinking through the details that I really grew up there. And on the back of that experience, I had so many templates and so many frameworks that I had to go through, mess up, go through again, mess up again. I was able to flip that with Time Doctor, which is a company that tracks your time, to be able to take a team of, I think at the time it was 2, maybe 3 or 4, into a team of around 30. And we were doing inbound, outbound, international expansion, changing the complete go-to-market strategy. And we took that company, which pre-COVID was doing, let's say, I don't want to put their numbers out there, but we'll say post-COVID, after we sort of had the fall of the rise and fall of COVID, ended up doing about 5 or 10 times more than they were doing previously. So anyways, that's where I've been. And then for the last couple of years now, I've been consulting with companies to do everything that I and other VPs of sales do in 10 months, in 12 months, but doing it 80% of it but 100% of the quality in 1 month or 2 months. So that companies that are, let's say, under 5 employees, under their first million, under their first 5 million, can get all of the lead system, sales system, hiring, onboarding, and managing system that they need without having to hire someone like me and pay us $400,000 a year, and without having to wait 3, 4, 5 years to do it before the revenue made it reasonable to do it. So that's where I am up until today, my friend.
Awesome. I love it. Earned the stripes. You mentioned this growing up and change in leadership style. And I love to double click on that, because I think that a lot of those listening to the podcast, they're doing founder-led sales themselves, or they're doing founder-led sales management. Or we have relatively new sales managers. So just in general, audience here are probably in the middle of that. What kind of leader do I want to be? Do I want to be the one that's friends? And I think that's probably where most of us start. Very familiar, the continuum, swinging to the other side of the continuum on a little bit more, I don't know how you want to call it, just by the numbers, probably more quantitative sales management. And it sounds like you found a middle ground between the two. Can you talk to us about that evolution? And now you've worked with a bunch of VP of sales. You've probably seen people work back and forth through this. How's your leadership approach changed?
I totally want to click into this, and feel free to push on me with any of this. So I think that, what I find is that most people that want to be managers come in with this friendly environment, and we want everyone to know that you're safe, because we came in from environments where we didn't feel safe. We felt like our boss was just a jerk. One of the things we don't recognize is that a lot of the things that we did that made it, a lot of the reasons that we worked so hard was because our boss was so challenging. I talked a minute ago about how this company, I had this really challenging CEO. I remember we had a meeting that was 2 hours, and we knew that it could go 5 hours, maybe 6, and you were going to get screamed at. And so that's crazy on the one hand, but on the other hand, it really sharpened me so much. So just recognizing that, I think, is important. But most of us do come in that friendly environment. The other people I see, what's interesting is other folks I see who are like just super, super money hungry, number 1, number 2, and number 3, killer individual contributors. They come in and are savage. They're like, there's no reason we should have anybody who's not good in 1 week, cut them. And what they don't understand is the nuance of getting humans to do things. What they do understand is the nuance of getting deals across the finish line. So I do just want to make it clear, like, you can come from either end of the spectrum, and you have to come to this middle ground. I think there's a couple of rules when it comes to balancing management, either too much in the friend zone and too much in the boss zone. What you got to do is first make sure that you've created an environment of trust, that people can say things to you and you're not going to tell anybody. People can put their trust in you, be vulnerable with you. The next thing you got to do is you need to create an environment where they feel like you're going to go back and forth with them, like you're going to work just as hard as they are. And the third is going to be one where they feel like you're going to help them. If those 3 things are true, you're going to get there. So, for example, to create that trust, what I always did was I just try to be as vulnerable as humanly possible. I'll talk about my parents. I'll talk about what I say in therapy. I'll talk about all the things that I'm struggling with, even if it's at the organization, to let them know, like, this guy is telling me stuff below the surface, and that that's inviting me to tell him stuff below the surface. And if I don't want to, which is fine, he's at least saying to me sort of non-verbally, it's okay. You trust me with the information you just shared with me. I think I can probably trust you. Where on the side of like working for people, I feel like I don't want to call it a trick, because it's something we should be doing constantly, and it should not come from a place of like tit for tat. But every month, or at least every quarter, you should be doing something that somebody on your team feels like has made a sizable impact on them. This typically can come in the form of getting rid of a field, getting rid of a meeting, just removing some policy that you might have, taking over something that's been annoying them, and just arguing with somebody internally so they don't have to. Little tiny things like that, but every time you do that, obviously it deposits into their bank account, and then it does two things. One, it gives you the ability to then ask for withdrawal on the back of that deposit. Two, it also tells them like he's going to put a deposit in, I'm going to put a deposit in. We're both like a marriage in this HOA, if you will. So when you're doing that every month, people are like, I trust this dude and I want to work hard for him because he's working hard for me. And that's when you can actually do the last bit, which is actually helping them. You can't do the helping unless you've done the first two. So once you get to the point where they trust you, you've earned the right, you have the space to help them. Once you get them working hard and you working hard, now the help will go somewhere because they're going to do something with it. And when it comes to helping, I think that too often what we do as managers, especially as friendly managers, is we try to give the answers. And what this creates is the conversations I have every week. Mike, I get so many Slacks from my team. I'm so busy with just questions from people, right? You get it. I see you guys. It's crazy because when you've done that, what we've done is we've actually created an environment where they don't trust themselves.
Yeah.
They either don't have a manual to refer to and know, okay, manual says A, I'll do A, or don't trust the manual they have inside their own head of their own gut. So what's really key is that we use the right coaching methodology for people. And I learned this straight from Manager Tools Basics. But what you do want to do is be like, hey, let's agree on what's the problem. You want to get better at blank. Cool. So even if I have no idea what you're talking about, I'm going to go, okay, well, what do you think's the right way to do that? Here's some cool ideas, and kind of scratch your head, even if you know the answer. Kind of scratch your head and kind of whiteboard out with what some potential answers are. And then what you do is you say, all right, well, are you game for that? Ask for their commitment in some level. And they cannot be game. You can change what the plan is. And then finally, offer specific help. Don't say, can I help you? Let me know if you need anything. But be like, hey, I could put a reminder in your calendar. Would that be helpful? Hey, I could reach out to you every one-on-one. Would that be helpful? And when you do that, they then feel like you've helped them, but it really is all their own. So I feel like I'm writing an essay right now, but like to put it, to wrap it up, to really balance how you manage people, you need to first create an environment where they trust you. Second, create an environment where they know that you're going to work your butt up. And third, create an environment where you're actually helping them. All those three things combined is what actually helps you be a good manager that creates a great culture, retains top reps, and doesn't have to spend all of your time answering Slacks.
I'll tell you the biggest thing I picked up from that is the importance of vulnerability, right? I always joke with Johnny and I'm like, man, business would be easy if it wasn't for all the people, and just trying to get humans to human is a tricky thing. And I think you're right. I tend to index more on the friendly manager, the friend zone, as you put it, kind of side of the spectrum. But I've also gotten some really great results out of teams that became very high performing by doing exactly what you said, man, is just bearing a little bit of my soul and showing them like, hey, it's okay. I don't have it all figured out. I'm not up here on the soapbox preaching, right? It's us against the problem, and just being a little bit vulnerable, man.
Yes.
That's a huge unlock for a lot of people listening. It's like, you don't have to have all the answers just because you're the boss.
Totally. And I will say too, the one area of vulnerability that I think has gone a long way in terms of creating culture is vulnerability about having to remove people. Mm-hmm. Like when they think the boss removed someone cold-heartedly, whether they liked the person and they knew it wasn't a good fit, or they didn't like the person and it wasn't a good fit. When the boss just comes in and says like the HR, hey guys, it wasn't the right move and we're moving forward, people are like, I can't trust you, because suddenly when it comes to firing people, you become a robot. So you're like a different person, where when you go, like, this was really hard for me and like, this is what I went through and, hey, I have to do this. How do you think it went? What can we do to support this person? People are like, wow, this guy is trustworthy even on the back end of my career here. So that's really important too. I always talk about like my Brene Brown, whenever I'm talking, even in interviews, I'm like, let me have a Brene Brown moment here for a second. Yeah. But I think if I could just double click on it for one more second, Johnny, before you jump in there, it just is something that I really want people to be doing more of, is in the interviews have these moments, because in the interview, everybody is like ultimately buttoned up. When you want to see what someone's actually going to be like, watch what happens when in an interview you say like, yeah, I didn't get the love I wanted as a kid. And it really hurt me through my teen years. And I feel like it's one of the reasons that I'm more extroverted now. I'd love to understand, like, what was life like for you, man? How are you doing? So I'm not saying you should dig into people's traumas. That's not it. And I'm not saying you should encourage people to share things you shouldn't. But simply sharing that lets that person go, wow, this is a real manager. This guy really cares about me. And more importantly, they will open up, whether it's about some trauma, which I don't want them to open up on if it's inappropriate, but they'll open up more in the interview. You'll see a lot more of them.
It's such a pattern interrupt. I love double clicking on interviewing. It's one of the things I take a lot of pride in doing.
Me too.
Yeah. And it's like, you're the first person I've talked to on this podcast, or really in general, other than Max Hansen from Y Scouts, and his book is another place I've seen this. But, just asking people like, hey, how did you grow up? And like, what's been your journey through life to lead you to be the person you are? And I always de-risk it for them by saying, whatever you're comfortable sharing is fine.
Yeah.
And then it's a great way to I think gauge if they have the willingness to share something. Again, we're not trying to like dig up traumas and get crazy, but just like something other than like, I went to Stanford and like whatever, right? Like, give me something so we can relate as humans. And just kind of seeing what they're into. It reminds me of that study that Google did, a Project Aristotle, right? Where they're trying to like deconstruct what makes these high performing teams. And then the number one thing was psychological safety. And I think that people take that term and they're like, well, if we have that, we can't be high performing. And I'm like, no, like it's the other way around. You can't be high performing if you don't have that. And I think you nailed it with the don't be a robot when you're firing someone. It doesn't mean you can never fire someone or you sacrifice your psychological safety. It's how you get there. It's less about where you get, more about how you get there. I think you're nailing it, man.
Totally.
I'm loving what you're putting down.
This is great.
It's great stuff.
Sweet. All right, let's do the Mike and Matt show. What's up, Johnny? You got anything, or are we just going to hang out and go off in the distance?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to lean in and get some free consulting from you here, because I'll tell you, I've struggled back and forth with holding a high bar of what we expect from our sales team and having a culture of high support, and and it's also something I help coach against a lot with our clients, is saying, hey, the friction to bring in new talent has to be lower than the friction of or the path of keeping a mid performer on the team. I like rename this. I don't know if you're a sports fan, but I call it like the Dak Prescott zone. Like, Dak Prescott is a quarterback who is the middle of the road. He's not a championship quarterback, but he's not terrible. And so he's got this entire franchise locked up. And like, I think he's just good enough for us to not feel confident that we can let him go, but also, can't see a path with us winning with him. And I think it's easy to find yourself in the gray area running a sales team of like, I'm not sure if I've got the franchise winning quarterback in every role, or, it's hard. It's harder when they're in the gray area than when it's like, clearly they're not the right fit. How do you help a VP reduce the friction and second guessing associated with leveling up the culture and performance of a team, especially as somebody you've come into lead teams in the middle? Sometimes you're inheriting team members, sometimes you've made some hires that don't pan out the way that you expect, but it's easy when they're missing quota month over month. It's harder when it's in the gray area. So how do you coach someone through the systems of, over time, if every 6 months, 12 months, we want to make sure that the level of our sales performance is increasing, how do you avoid that like just good enough hire that's
absolutely
potentially taking the seat of a high performer?
That's great. And I think you're nailing a few things here. There's a few things that this is opening up, by the way, that I'll just kind of dive into, and then I'll answer your question. I think the first bit is recognizing when you have a C performer, all of us nice people that get into management and want to be nice, we are the ones who spend far too much time with that bottom performer. So it's important to note that Matt, you get it. So it's important to note that what should happen is anytime you have a poor performance, let's say by a human, what you want to do is first let them know, then and add more support, Then you want to let them know formally and add even more support. And then you want to let them off on their own. And maybe it isn't the right fit. But if you haven't done those first two, you're not going to feel good enough about letting them off. But just give yourself a specific time frame when you go to do these things. If your sales cycle is under 90 days, these should be 30-day times. 30 days if you stink, 30 days if formally you stink, 30 days if you got to go. And then the second thing I want to say is on the opposite side of this, which is because we're spending so much time with their bottom performers, if only we can get Jerry to be the best guy ever, we spend way less time with their top performers, because also typically the top performers are lone rangers and they're like, leave me alone, I got this. But spending time with our top performers doesn't need to be actual time with the top performer. You can spend time for the top performer. Maybe that's looking at their deals and figuring out where in your network, if you have someone that can help them close a deal. Maybe that's hiring a VA for them to handle how unorganized they are, because they all are really unorganized. There's a variety of things that you can do to support that guy. But let's go to your question. How do we handle that middle of the road person? And how do we overcome that feeling of like, we can't lose them, we can't move them up? What do we do?
And Mike, I'll tell you I'll give more specific to the profile.
Sure.
Not hitting target, but doing all the intangibles while they're working hard, right? So they're a great culture fit. They're working hard. When you say jump, they say how high. They put in the effort. It's just not showing up in results. I think that's the gray area that's hardest to suss out, and one that you can find yourself looking up. You don't decide you're going to give it 3 months or 6 months, but you could look up and realize you've had 6 months of this person being on the team, and the reality is like the results aren't there. The effort has been.
Let me see if this answers the question, and maybe I'm sure I'll have some people that disagree with me here. When you have someone on your team who's doing all the inputs, but the output isn't there, sometimes that just means it's the wrong team. I've had places where I see this very often. Every week I usually get a call from somebody who says, I was killing it at my last company, killing it at the company before that, came to this new company, can't close the deal. Are they a bad sales rep? No. It just, for whatever reason, doesn't work out. It's this, every company has a combination of leadership, expectations, product market fit, customer. And if you don't have that weird combination that works perfectly, it just doesn't fit. So I always tell someone, hey, I'm looking to jump ship. I hate my company, whatever. I'm looking to leave. Where do I go? I go, if you're killing it at your company, only go to other companies where you're selling to that same target market, and only try as much best you could to find a company that has other major things similar to your current company. So if you're killing it at Salesforce, don't go work at a startup. If you're killing it at a startup, don't go work at Salesforce. If you're killing it somewhere where you have a ton of support to get inbound leads, don't go somewhere where they're going to pay you $500,000 a year, but it's all outbound. So you got to think about those things to actually be successful, because just like any business owner too, there are plenty of things we were good at, plenty of things we were not good at, and there's plenty of things we messed up, but we shouldn't be risking the revenue of our business on someone to learn on the back of our revenue if it's going to be truly not a good fit. So no, if you're getting the inputs, not the outputs, you can thank you for your time and move on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm curious how much of performance, let's narrow this down to, in B2B SaaS, the success and failure of a sales team, how much is dependent upon who we hire, and then how much is it dependent upon how well we coach and manage post hire? Like
it's 80-20. Who you hire makes way more of the difference. So if you have a really good team, I've come into good teams and then I've up-leveled them. But I could think actually Workable is a great example. I remember coming in and had so many great folks in the team, changed the script, up-leveled the sales. We increased our win rate 20%. We increased our deal size 15 or 20% in the first 90 days or so. But it kind of was like coasting from there. And then it was a matter of, I remember we lost a good rep, and I was doing 3 times as much coaching. Couldn't get the team where we needed to. We ended up bringing one of the reps back, actually, who had left, and suddenly we were doing well again. So it really is about retaining the right recruiting and retaining the right reps. And I feel like I've learned a lot about retaining because I've lost some incredible people, and so I'm happy to talk about that as well. But yeah, it's mostly people.
Let's do that. I love to take two stops in, man. I'm already feeling like we might have more on our list to chat through than we have time for.
Let's
So man,
go.
you just got a wealth of knowledge and background. I appreciate you
Thanks,
unpacking it
man.
this way. Let's start with what do you see most commonly if you're working with a VP and they don't have the hiring stuff nailed? Just run me through maybe the top 1 to 3. These are the low hanging fruit that we go after to make sure if you're not doing these 1 to 3 things, hiring is probably not where it needs to be for you to be able to hold your team accountable. Cause I kind of see the ability to hold your existing team accountable and to expect high performance is directly related to your ability to go source new reps. Like if you don't have a great hiring process in place, you inevitably will lower the bar because you have no
You'll
other
attract
choice.
it.
So
Yeah, exactly.
I'll say oftentimes to our founders and sales leaders is like, hey, really make sure that you've got access to the best talent in the market so that you have the confidence to coach your team as hard as you need to coach them to get the best out of them. So talk to me about what are the top 1 to 3 things that are missing for a VP of sales that doesn't have access to the top talent.
Yeah. First thing is going to be a hiring scorecard. You need to have something quantitative that you can look at to just check your gut, because the people you're going to love are going to be the extroverts or the ones that have some weird thing on their resume. So you need a hiring scorecard just to hold yourself accountable. The second thing that you need is you need to know how to dig in to their grit. So this is where I want to talk about how they've overcome adversity, and want to talk about their previous jobs and their previous bosses and how they've handled things, because that's going to give you an understanding of, can this person handle adversity? Their ability to handle adversity is directly going to be seen in their revenue, because sales is adversity. And then finally, it's in expectation setting. So if I'm writing a job description, I don't want it to be to anybody. I want people to go, I don't want to work there. When I'm in the interview, I want to scare some people away, and I want to make it extremely attractive to top performers. And things like, hey, we only keep top performers around here. We have a real culture of elevating everybody who does incredible, and we do not accept anything under 100%. That is the kind of thing that will be very motivating to a top performer, but really unmotivating to a bottom performer. As long as you can hold it up with real reality. Some people just say that, but you can even tell the person I'm interviewing is not a high status person, is not a high performer. Then it's going to be really clear this person's just saying that, but really they're just like more of a place that's going to fire everybody. So you get those things right, you should be able to get the right folks in the door.
Awesome. Now let's say you've got the right folks in the door. You have the culture of high performance. How do you make sure that a high performer doesn't leave?
Yeah. So there's a couple techniques or a couple of tools I use here to make sure that a high performer never leaves. You got to make sure you're running one-on-ones with them every single week. Oh, here's a plus sign for you on the screen. You got to show them that you care about them. Tell them about your life. Ask them about how things are going on outside of work, that kind of a thing. 2, you need to make sure that every month you're running a 9-box matrix. I think this is an older technique, but I still do it. I don't care. The 9-box matrix is basically potential versus performance. And that's going to help you really realize when performance might be slipping. And you want to do that monthly, because what we find with the high performers, we give them so much runway that they might have 3 or 4 bad months, but in your mind, they haven't. So you want to make sure you have that to identify when is performance slipping, because that typically will be the start of them wanting to leave. And then finally, you want to have a quick check-in with yourself monthly of who do I think is likely to leave on the team, and how much of an impact would that make on the team. So really what we're talking about here is a team-wide check of just gut feel, a team-wide check of actual performance, and then a week-to-week individual check. And if with that many checks in place, you are not able to see when someone's unhappy or looking to move or whatever, you're going to have some bigger fish to fry. The culture you have in the first place is not one of high performance.
Yeah. I love, dude, it starts them leaving. Their heart and mind leaves before their body does. Yeah, so absolutely. What you're getting at here is if you're having the conversations frequently enough, you'll figure out when is the heart and mind leaving, and make sure that the vision and the where we're going as a company, that their personal vision and mission fits inside that you have a chance to
You get it.
co-create what the next chapter looks like versus them telling you, hey, I think my future's outside the business. So I love it, man. Matt, you had something to say?
I just want to call out for our listeners right now that number one, this is management fire, but number two, it has nothing to do with sales, right? Like
Right.
in the sense of everything that you just described. I just don't want anyone to zone out in the sense of like, I don't run a sales team, so this doesn't apply. If you are a human managing humans, every single thing that just got laid out here in the past 5, 6, 7 minutes about these rhythms, about the one-on-ones, and getting the overall read on the team culture and the 9 box, like which I love. Like we do a similar thing. Just if you're managing people, just rewind to this podcast and go take some notes and write this stuff down, because this is the matrix. Like this is what you need to see. It takes real work and a real time investment and rhythms to do this right. It's not like, I'm the boss and I'm just going to make it up. Like it's real. It's a real workload, but it's not just about managing a sales team. And I just want to call that out
1 second
for people.
Yeah, well, one thing I got to add on to that before we jump to, whenever I do any sort of comments on my management TikTok or Instagram, where I say, here's how you manage people, and you say this phrase or you do this thing, inevitably I get 100 comments that are, why don't you just be normal? Just be authentic. Just be yourself. And the fact is, when we're on sales calls, we're doing techniques and different things to make sure that we can move people to do what we want them to do. And the same thing is true in life. And so if you want people to be the best version of themselves, that means that you can't just be the regular version of yourself. You need to manufacture a little bit about how you run the team. I don't think your high school football coach talks to his friends the way he talked to you in high school football, but he may have made you the best version of yourself as a result. So there is a level of authenticity balanced with manufactured push or manufactured vulnerability, even if needed to drive that performance.
In and of itself, it's sales, right? I mean, like everything.
Yeah, that's true too.
Is sales. I was coaching a group of of our early stage founders yesterday, probably 40 or 50 of them, and most of them don't have sales teams selling through trials. That's what the topic of the coaching call was. And I was like, basically told them, first off, if sales makes you feel like, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson, like you've already failed. You're a salesperson. You're a founder. You're a salesperson, right? You're going to hire someone, selling a vision. If you want to keep someone, you're selling a future, right? It has nothing to do with closing deals in the pipeline in HubSpot. That's just one flavor of sales. Man, I love it. All right, I'll be quiet.
Cool.
Maybe.
All right, Mike, let's shift gears to outbound sales. I'd love to get your viewpoint on, hey, what does it look like to build a scalable outbound system today? And then I'd love to get your view on where you think it's going. AI is certainly changing the game and having an influence. Matt and I have some differing opinions on what the impact will be of AI on outbound sales. But let's start off with, what's the opportunity today? How do you build a scalable outbound system?
Yeah, we're in this wonderful gap period right now before there's been new rules with emails and before everybody gets some new tool. Outbound is really interesting, and here's what's happened. A couple of years ago, everyone on the planet bought Apollo. And I don't think it's talked about enough how big of a shift Apollo made on the entire planet of sales. Because previously, the people who could get sequences and sorry, you want to jump in, Johnny?
Yeah, for those that don't know, what's Apollo?
Oh, sorry. Apollo.io is a tool for capturing contact information and sending email sequences out. But previous to Apollo existing, which was like $80 a month, the only tools you could do this with were like 15,000, 100,000 a year. So we went from let's say the US, went from a country of maybe tens of thousands of companies that were able to blast everybody over email to hundreds of thousands of us are now doing it. So suddenly nobody trusted their inbox. It got way worse for everybody. And we're all seeing that now. So what we've seen pop up as a result of that is there's like 100 different companies now that are like, we can make custom memes and we can do AI videos and we can automatically add in the first line of the inbox and we're going to automate all the personalization. That's all coming in the backs of email getting less and less trusted and therefore people having to get more and more unique. But all we're doing is just chasing this never-ending tail. And what I'm on a mission to do, but not against actual people, but I'm a little bit on a mission to get rid of the SDR role. This role is not the requirement that everyone believes it needs to be. While 10 years ago, all the SaaS companies read predictable revenue and bought a bunch of SDRs, and that was cool because they got VC money and it didn't matter that they were not profitable. Even now, regular people, founder-led companies are doing the same thing because they think that's what you're supposed to do. But if we pay an SDR, let's say $75,000 to $80,000 a year, and they're generating, let's say, 8 meetings a month, we're paying some, which is what a typical SDR will do, 8 to 12 meetings a month. So now we're basically paying $80,000 for 90 meetings. This is insane. This doesn't make any sense. Unless you have some crazy win rate of 50%, this doesn't work. So that's all to say, how do we make outbound work today? What we want to do is we want to use AI just as a mountain to stand on top of. So we can still have an SDR here on doing this, but for founder-led companies, you don't need it. You can stand on top of that mountain, yes, even with everything else you have going on. Here's what we do. So the first thing you have to do is you need to get a list of people that are in your ICP. We can talk through ICP, exercises and all that, but get a list of people on your ICP. Now, there's 2 major things important here. Here's the first one. Personalization is not nearly as important as it used to be. Relevance is more important than it used to be. So what we need to do is actually take that list, split it into teeny tiny lists. So what I typically do is a client will come to me and they'll say, Mike, we sell to clients A and B, these 2 types of industries. And we typically sell to title 1 and 2. So now we've got A, B, 1, 2. We got 4 different ICPs. I'm going to take that and split it up and say, okay, well, there's also a difference in general around a company that's been around for 1 year versus 10 years. Who does have a VP of sales? Who doesn't have a VP of sales? There's a difference between an individual whose tenure at that one company is under 90 days, is under six months, is over 6 months. So now we can take that list of, let's say, four different ICPs, and it can become 24 ICPs. So what we're going to do now with this list is we then need to leverage the power of AI and actually create some personalization. Now, I don't have the best prompt or haven't found something that will work at some massive scale when it comes to ChatGPT. So I try to reduce the number of words I want ChatGPT to return for me. But I do try to get creative with the type of information I pull from ChatGPT. Now, before I go to this next bit, I know that Clay exists. There's a company called Clay, and Clay will basically automatically do a bunch of this research for you. The challenge with their wonderful company, and recommend it for anybody who needs to do things at scale and has the cash to do it, it can get very, very expensive because they do a credit system. So you might say, oh, I have 1 million credits, but you might, for what I do, for example, each contact would be like 30 credits. So you end up having to pay a ton of money for these. All right. But let's talk about what we do now. We have this super relevant list, super similar segmented list. Then you want to create a column, and I have like a whole sheet for this, where it pulls in top-rated restaurant in their city, top-rated dish at that restaurant. It takes the name of their company and shortens it. It takes the name of their job, it shortens it. It finds the first job that they got, it shortens that. It may pull their LinkedIn bio if they have it, and it pulls a chat sheet, a small PS. If it doesn't have that, we have a PS that comes out saying, congrats on hitting your anniversary, and it pulls the number of months versus number of years anniversary. So doing this is now giving me, let's call it a half dozen different personalized variables, which can all be done with a GPT plugin into Excel. That's what I do with all my clients, even the ones that are using my Done With You program. So that's the setup. Now let's move on to the next bit. So we got sequences. Sure, I sell sequences, I write sequences. Some work, some don't for different industries, but you just go Google it or find something that you like and start there. But I said there were 2 things that were important. Here's the second thing. Deliverability. If you send all of your emails through HubSpot, you send more than 100 a day, you're going to get flagged as spam, or you're not going to get flagged, but they're not going to go through. You send 100 emails a day through Apollo, same thing. You send 100 emails a day from ActiveCampaign or Marketo or some other marketing tool, they all come in with that banner. It looks like it's not a real thing. You can't do threading on the emails. It doesn't work. So what are you left with? Well, historically, what we've done is we've said, let's just hire more SDRs. 10 SDRs, 10 email accounts, 10 emails a day per email account. Look at us. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. So what you want to do is you want to instead get multiple domains, joinacme.com, tryacme.com, multiple emails per domain. You plug all of those into a tool like Instantly or Smartlead are two companies where you can do this, and you do domain stacking. So now I, Mike Manzi, founder-led sales, might have 100 emails. I plug all of those emails into Instantly. I then plug all of my sequences into Instantly. I tweak my sequence ever so slightly for each of those 24 different segments. And I now tell Instantly, hey, don't send more than 10 emails a day per email address, but here's 100 email addresses. And I add into the sequences, by the way, all of that personalized information. Now you can send out 1,000 emails a day and still get 50 to 80% open rates like I'm getting, and still get between 1 and 9% reply rates like I'm getting. And so you as the founder can do 1,000 emails a day and handle the 30, 40 inbound emails you get per day. Do you need an SDR to do that? No, you've got 10 minutes to do that. And you can simply plug those things in to tools like Dripify, to take that same automation and have it happen over LinkedIn, to a parallel dialer like Nooks. So you can do 1 hour of cold calls and have Nooks make 100 cold calls for you while you just sit on the phone. Or if you want to hire an SDR, you can. But now instead of having an SDR craft 50 incredible emails, of which still only 20% are going to get opened, you could have an SDR who responds to 20 emails a day, is doing cold calls all day, LinkedIn messages all day, doing research all day to really find the right folks. If you do those things, you can get outbound to run for you. And that's how you get outbound to work today. Now, next year, who knows? But that's how it works today.
I love, first off, love the tactical give. Like I took notes like a madman there.
So tactical. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I'm really curious, and where Matt and I were debating prior to our recording here was, where do you think this goes over time, right? What you've just described is the ability for an individual to dramatically increase the number of messages they're sending out. And you mentioned a couple of different tools, and so there's a moment in time where a segment will hear this and like get ahead. But I think that where the market is going will lead to like more and more messages being sent. Do you think that this makes it easier for more people to do outbound, and that, companies with lower ACVs would be precluded, who have in the past couldn't really do outbound to make it work? That makes it more likely that they do? Do you think it raises the expectation? Like, how do you think this impacts outbound? AI impacts outbound over the next 2 to 5 years?
Yeah. So AI, and even what I just said, which is what I literally install in companies, is going to kill outbound. So like the thing I just told you is going to kill itself. Truly, the only way for sustained long-term growth is going to be through content, because what's going to happen here is as you stop to use your email, you stop using your email because now everybody is relevant. Everybody has the best message, and you're like, holy cow, I can't run into a bad message. We're gonna shy away from email, and I bet you we'll see Slack get bigger and bigger, and Teams get bigger and bigger, and people will say, I don't even need email. So if I get an email, it's like getting a phone call. It's probably not for me. So what's going to happen is it's going to remove people from the sales process, the traditional sales process, for a longer period of time. Way back in the day, the sales process was you walk in the door and Bob, now we're talking the sales process. Now they've already done some level of research before they talk to us, but we're now starting the sales process. But because we won't be able to capture demand as early as we can today with outbound, people will be able to do almost all of their research and decision-making prior to the sales process. So what we're going to have to do is we're either going to lean, and we'll probably do both, hard on product-led growth. People will start to just make their websites really conversion rate optimized, pricing, conversion rate optimized to really speed up that, let's call it sales funnel, even though it's on a website without a person. But the other thing is we're going to, as people who want to reach out to folks, we need to reach them where they are, which will be like on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere else, for them to decide before they even have a problem, I like this company. And then when they do have a problem, we're just a de facto answer. And so without that long term, I mean, outbound is not going to be working for a long term. No way, not possible.
Yeah, it seems my hunch was that that if you had to have, let's just say today when predictable revenue came out, it was, 25K annual contract value was about the minimum that you could do to make it work for a cold outbound. It was lower than that if you're doing, inbound marketing and calling those. Maybe you could get away with it at like 10 to 15K. But I think that number goes to 50K in a year, 100K, just because response rates would go down by so much
Definitely.
that it'd just be tough to make sense. The easier it is to send volume, the more volume you're going to have to send to get the response.
Absolutely.
But I love that you have, it's funny, Matt and I talk about making sure that we are capturing the opportunity today, which you just laid out well, how long that lasts. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 12, but you also are heavily invested both personally, and then I'm assuming in what you teach the VPs you work with on the long game, which is the content creation. So I love that. Can you brag a little bit, talk about what you've done on the TikTok and Instagram side, and then I'd love to unpack
absolutely.
how you did that.
Sure. So I think it's 2 years ago. I don't know if it's 2 or 3. I'm just like, it's all blurred. But a couple of years ago, I decided I was going to spend 30 days and I was going to post three times a day on TikTok. One friend of mine, she's a photographer. She was the only other friend at the time who admitted she would like watch TikToks. And to me, she said, I just did this post and I got 700,000 views and I'm booked up for the next 3 months. I said, no way. Well, I'm competitive as hell. So I said, I'm going to do this for 30 days. I'm going to beat her at this. So every day I posted 3 times a day. I had no idea what I was doing. All I did to prep was I just Googled or, TikTok, searched some hooks and some different formats of how to do a video, filmed a couple in this office here and saw what would happen. Now, within 2 months, actually not even, within 1 month of starting, someone just called me up, like booked a meeting with me and said, what do you do? And I was like, what do you need? And they said this. And I go, funny thing, that's exactly what I do. And they said, we'll give you $10,000 to do this. And I said, great, I would take the $10,000 to do this. And that was it. So since then, I've now grown that TikTok account to 120,000 followers. About 6 months in, I decided that my audience was all salespeople and I wanted to talk to leaders. So I opened up a new account. So I now have both. I post 6 times a day. And on the leader account, I've grown that to 80 or 90,000 followers. And then this year in January, actually between Christmas and like January 2nd, I gained 60,000 followers on Instagram. And then from then to now, I've gained another 60,000 followers. So like overall, it's like 300,000 followers across those platforms. I don't got nothing on LinkedIn. I got like 8,000 followers on LinkedIn. Every post I do gets like 5 clicks, nothing on it. YouTube, I haven't really focused on making my content great on YouTube. So I'm like 2,000-3,000 followers there. So there's still a lot of opportunities in these different pockets, but I've been able to grow these channels. And, I'm typically averaging between 20 and 40 meetings. Actually, this month I'm pacing for 60 meetings. So 20 to 40 meetings a month exclusively from TikTok, Instagram, and let's say YouTube and LinkedIn potentially.
Man, I love it. If you don't follow Mike, you should. That's actually what got you onto this podcast was like,
sure, exactly, right.
I seen you scroll through, seen many of your posts and didn't realize how closely connected we were through your time at Time Doctor, but you're a great follow on those accounts. I'd love to unpack, Matt and I talk frequently, and for our listeners listening that have heard previous episodes, we're kind of harping on this. Founder-led content is a must now. It is really becoming less and less a choice. And I think that for those sitting with the Outbound tool right now, like we have some of our largest and most successful clients are heavy outbound, right? But they're also they themselves started to shoot more content and seeing the trend growing that you alluded to. So can you help unpack, like, I think a lot of times the question is like, how do I get started? I don't have anything to say. Matt and I have talked to her blue in the face about like our perspective on that. But what you said, you made the commitment, hey, for 30 days, I'm going to shoot 3 videos. Like, talk to us about where you got started, how it's evolved now. You put out 3 videos per day. I doubt there's like an entire media, 6 videos a day. I doubt you got an entire media team sitting around you right now. So like, talk to us about where you started, how it evolved. How do you crank out 6 videos a day?
Yeah, man. So this is, I'm so passionate about this, and I hope everybody's listening, they're taking notes, not because like I just want you to take notes, but because I really truly feel like everybody should be capitalizing on this right now. The goal of my company is to make people more proud of themselves by selling more stuff. And I think this is a cool opportunity to get people to be feeling way more proud of themselves. So let's just get rocking. First thing that I did was I just said, okay, I'm doing it. And I was like, a few days of just rumbling, like, are you sure? Going to bed? Am I doing it? You're like, you got to do it. The next thing I did was I just went to TikTok and searched hashtag sales to see like who's out there, what are they doing? And I wrote down 2 things. I wrote down what are the like hooks that they're using, because I kept hearing that was important, and what was the format they were using. So a lot of hooks I just found were like negative hooks. So instead of being like the old BuzzFeed hooks of like 3 ways to see how you could be better, 10 ways to kill it, it was the opposite. It was like 3 things I wish I never, I wish I did 10 years ago. 2 ways to stop having things happen. So using that away language made all the difference. The next thing was the format. So I saw a lot of them were what they call talking head, just like the selfie, whatever. A lot were like doing things in the house, like they were making coffee or whatever. And then a lot were these like faux role plays where someone would like, they would talk into the camera and put like a napkin on their head to pretend to be like the other person. So I'm like, okay, those are the formats and those are the hooks. Then I just wrote down general topics that I feel like I had some opinion on and started filming. What I found has made all the difference to get me to continue to crank things out. This is so dumb. Not filming in any app other than TikTok. Hear me out. So on TikTok, this is real tactical. On TikTok, what you do is you press and hold the button and you let go when you want to stop recording. And it just records a snippet. So if you were to watch my TikToks, me making TikToks, it sounds like this. There's a couple of things, delete. There's delete. Okay, so today I want delete. And so I don't have a phone with like 60 videos that I'm deleting because it took me so long to get started. I can just hit like dismiss or whatever it says, and I can just get rid of that last 2 seconds or whatever. And that has made all the difference to get me to say, okay, I'm gonna make this because I don't have to do a long-winded video. I had to do a video recently that was like a minute. Oh my God, it took me like an hour. Because I'm like, okay, make sure you get it right, but don't sound scripted. With this, you can do it.
Let me make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. You said instead of you sitting down to record a good 1-minute video, you record in the app, which allowed you just to start with record a good hook. So 6 seconds. And then you did the next 6 seconds and you smaller segments. So you're chunking down to all the way down from, hey, I'm going to produce content. We make the commitment. Okay, now I need to do a video. Instead of shooting the whole video in one take, I'm going to try to do just a good hook and intro.
3 seconds. I need 3 seconds. That's all I need.
I love it.
And so it was like these little commitments of 3 seconds that makes it so. And that's still how I do it today, even as well.
Baby steps. I love it.
That is a big piece of it. And then I will say, I tell them when they're getting started, I'm like, you got to post 3 times a day. And I heard that originally on the app. People would say that, but I realized there's a couple of reasons it's really important. One is you have no clue what's going to go viral for sure. And then 2 is your creativity will come when you make a bunch. What I do is I only film videos in my car, which I know I shouldn't be doing, on the way home when I do drop off and on the way to school when I'm doing pickup. And what I find every day, the first video, I just sit there, man. I sit there holding my phone, trying to think of something. And it takes me like 10 minutes to get one video out. And then in the remaining 8 minutes, I'll crank out 4 videos. Because you're just like, I got it. I get what I'm saying. I'm with it. That's it. And then here or there, I've like saved a video or 2 that I've liked and gone back to that. And I want to give one other different tactic on how you can make videos. If you're thinking, Mike, I don't want to make to show my face. I don't want to do this. It's a really good time right now on Instagram. Instagram is definitely about 6 to 9 months behind TikTok. So it's kind of cool. Like I see what gets big on TikTok and then it gets big on Instagram later. When I do a post on TikTok, like the one I'm going to tell you about right now, it'll get 1,000 views. That same post on Instagram will get 30,000 views. So I'm going to show you right now the easiest trick you can to make content without having to show your face and make it wicked fast. So what you do is you're going to actually just, I wish I could remember the website, but just Google vertical videos, vertical HD videos, or don't. Just film 15-second footage of you walking around your neighborhood, of your apartment, whatever, does not matter. The next thing you do is you just write down on the screen something that would take 10, 12 seconds to read, and then you make the video 8 seconds long. This now makes people rewatch the video in order to actually see all of the text. It makes it really engaging. You'll typically say something that's controversial, which will cause a lot of comments if you're being true to yourself, because you're not just trying to make everybody happy. So that's a way that you can create a ton of content without having to actually show your face. A couple other tricks you can do here is top 10 lists. You're a realtor, top 10 largest houses, smallest houses, highest cost per square foot, lowest cost per square foot. You sell data software, just think about all the things that people you sell to, chief data officers care about. Google, chief data officers, they care about costs of their team and different project management tools. They care about whatever. Okay, cool. Here's the top 10 project management tools. Here's the top 10 different ways that IT people like to be managed. Here's the top 10 people I just found on LinkedIn after an hour of research. So you could do so many top 10 lists that will keep you endlessly busy, and then just duplicate that content for top 5 lists or one of the top 10, or double click into one person and talk about why that person is the top 10, why that market is the top 10. So you should easily be able to come up with 30, 40 pieces of content if you just sit down and actually make a little bit over a little bit of time. You'll get more creative as you go.
So I want to run that back for just a sec to make sure that
Thanks. I know I talk fast.
No, I love it. And you're true to your website, right? What do you say? East Coast Vibes, Zero Patience, or something like that? I was like, my friend. So basically a stock video or some B-roll, some stuff where you're not in it, right, is the background. You write down what you want physically overlaid over the video, and then you riff on the same topic verbally, like with a voiceover is what you're saying, correct?
Later on another video, I'm saying like video one is stock image text post.
Got it. So no
video
no
2,
voice, just rocking.
Nothing. Sure. Yeah. Video 2 could be the same thing, text over it. Video 3 could be just the B-roll and you're saying it. I got a couple videos where I actually do it and I'm just writing. So I just literally film my hand writing, and I just put it on like 5x speed. So you want to see it. Or I'll do a whiteboard and I'll write something down, do a 2-second video of the whiteboard, write a little bit more, 2-second video, 2-second video, 2-second video. What people want is they want to know that there's a payoff at the end. So when you show them a top 10 list, they got to see number 1. When you show them that you're writing something that's going to take up the whole screen, they got to see the bottom. When they start reading the top, they got to get to the bottom. So that's what makes people engaged. There's obviously a variety of ways. I could probably tell you 80 different things right now that can work in these different platforms. But I do think that to get started, it's really just write down a few things, come up with a couple of top 10s, and start with some text over the screen. Heck, I even put together, maybe we could put it in the show notes or whatever. I put together a document where you can just ask customers certain questions. And then if you fill in their answers, it'll then give you a hook, like the actual hook you should use, the text that they said, and the outro you should use. So you can just get the text at least for like 1,200 different posts. No problem.
I love it.
Maybe we'll share that.
I want to double click into your experience doing this. And here's why. Because I've been on this journey recently. I am exactly the same as you, except for all the followers, which is cool, but I'll get those things. But here's the thing, right? Is like anytime we're starting something new, it's like you got to get through the shitty first draft phase, right? Like the beginner. What was that like? Are you one of these guys, you were already well-spoken, you got on TikTok and you blew it up during that first month, or did you have to go through the trough? Like walk us through that, man.
Yeah, I think that the thing that is the most important is there are 2 elements that I think make for a really solid, let's call it business TikTok or Instagram or whatever. One, you need to be true to yourself. Like, don't try to get fancy. I've seen a lot of people that are trying, and they're trying to like do it like it should be on TikTok. Just be yourself. Hell, I just got an editor and had her edit a few of my videos. People just started shredding me in the comments. They're like, "What? This sucks! Like this guy just said he's moving away from what he does." Just be yourself. And the second thing is, what people want now is they want tangible, tactical value that they can implement today. They don't want to hear a 1-minute video on the general idea of something. They do want to hear a 1-minute video that has 5 takeaways they can actually take right now. So if you get those two things wrong, it's not going to work. Forget how, let's say, good you are, hot you are, whatever. That said, in the beginning, what I was getting wrong was I was adding too much. I kept seeing everybody doing transitions and sound, and it made me my videos took me all this time to edit because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Yeah. And so I'm Googling, like, how do you edit on TikTok? And I realized that was all a huge waste of time. And I think, though, I think that the other was I started out with just these listicles, 3 ways, 5 things. And people are tired of that stuff, man. Yeah. So just getting down to like bringing myself into it. I've interviewed 100 people. Here are the top things I've said to them. I've listened to 1,000 minutes of sales calls. So you don't have to. Here's 3 takeaways. I messed up and got fired 3 people that I shouldn't have had to fire in the first place. Learn from my mistakes. That's the kind of stuff people are actually interested in.
I love that. It's funny because I've been on a similar realization where the only thing you can be for any extended period of time is yourself, right? Everything else is gonna get stale. It's gonna rot on the vine. It's not gonna work, you know? And so it is really interesting because I think it's, at least for me, I'm not saying this is true for you necessarily, but for me, it was a bit of insecurity, I think, of thinking I needed to be somebody I wasn't in order to fit in with everyone that I was seeing on the internet. And I kind of got to go back and just start mashing the delete key on a lot of my earlier videos for the first couple of months. Cause I was just like it's like trying on all these different shoes, but you don't even know how big your feet are, you know, it's just so weird. And then, and then it clicked and it's like, it's just me. I just got to be.
Totally. You know what happened about 2 weeks ago, maybe it was 3 weeks ago. I did the opposite of what I was trying to do. Instead of clicking record and unrecord, I was actually doing the opposite. So I was my video, and I didn't look at my video. Like I just added the caption and posted it. And people were like, it was about pips. And people are like, this man's editing needs to be put on a pip. Like, it's so funny. So it's literally just me in the car. Like, the hook is there. I'm like, what do you want? You want to put people on pips, and here's why you want to do it, or whatever I'm saying. And then it's like the phone down. You just see my gut in the car, my heavy breathing as I'm like, trying to just drive a car. Somehow I'm breathing heavy. And, my wife was like, you taking that down? I'm like, no, hell no. Yeah. That was great. It's so funny. People see me like pull the camera up and then go, okay, and just pull the camera down. It's so embarrassing. But I think actually it brought people in. They were like, okay, cool. This guy's legit. Yeah. I appreciate him. So yeah, I think it's important.
I love it, man. That's awesome. It's so it's a wild skill though to have that perseverance. And it's funny because especially when you're good at things, but not good at something, right? I feel like it's this strange thing that happens in our brains where we assume because we're good at 3 or 4 other things that we're a decade or 2 into, that we're going to go do this new skill and be good at that too. And it's like, you got to remind yourself that like, it's okay and expected to suck at this thing, or it probably wouldn't be worth doing in the first
place.
Place.
I mean, if you guys have the time for it or want me to, I'd love to just give some tips on this stuff because I just see so many people trying and just getting it so wrong, and just going so clearly in the wrong direction. If you're open to it,
I think it'll resonate well with our founders.
All right, let's rock. So here's the deal: what your content. I know there's plenty of content about like film while what you're building and everything. That's really cool for like if you're building a physical product to be like, here's us in the grocery store. That stuff's cool. But especially when it's software that you've built, so it's kind of in the back of your knowledge, or your service, and it's on the back of your knowledge, that's not quite what people are looking for. What your content must answer this. It must be, is the person I'm selling to going to get value and be able to change something they're doing as a result of what I tell them? So instead of like, let's say, so I'm a fractional VP. If I start making fractional VP content, That's great for fractional VPs. None of my clients care about that. None of them. So I shouldn't be like, here's how I make sure I'm like organized and I can like handle multiple clients. That's a waste of everybody's time. I want to think more, okay, my clients, what their problems are. I don't have enough leads. I don't have a system to actually close deals. I can't hire the right people and keep them on board. I don't have the time to lead my team. So I'm talking about things that you would want to know if you were trying to lead a team. Things you'd want to know if you were trying to make a sales system. Things you want to know if you wanted a lead system. So don't ever think it's really about you. It's about value for that individual person. That's really, really important. The next thing with it is, I'm just going to repeat this, that it needs to be something they can do something with right then. If they're reading a book, they might be thinking about it for a few days. If they're listening to a podcast, maybe a few hours. A TikTok and Instagram, a thing on LinkedIn, maybe a few minutes or a few seconds. And so you're not going to tell someone something about like the general take on Outbound, like you asked me. I'm not going to do a whole thing on the general take of Outbound on Instagram. I'll do it on a podcast. On Instagram, I'm going to go like, here are the tactical things you need to do in order to make sure you can take advantage of the current situation of Outbound. So make sure that if you want to talk about something, maybe it's softwares you're using. People love to know new technology they can get. A new shortcut on your iPhone that makes a difference. That's cool. I know people are constantly stuck in this thought of like, I have to post on LinkedIn because that's where my buyers are, and I have to post content about my product. All of that is completely useless. It needs to be about something that person cares about. Do an iPhone shortcut. Do a keyboard shortcut. Do the softwares that you use to keep organized. Do the thing you use in Google Calendar to make things work as a ex-project manager from Facebook. That's what people actually give a shit about, and they can do something and go, you know what, man, that guy's the freaking best. Like I use this shortcut and I love it. So when you come up in their feed a week later and you go, hey, here's how I make lead systems and sales systems, they're like, well, tell me more. I don't know anything about leads or sales. Heck, I'd probably say 10% of my comments are, hey, Mike, I'm not in sales, but I just love your content. That's because I'm not saying it has to be about every single sale call and what I'm doing. So those two things are just so critical. I want everyone to really understand that. And then I could give you guys some like tricks of the trade of how to get the algorithm to work for you, whether it be TikTok or Instagram. So one of them I gave you earlier, which is make the text take longer to read than the video is. That's a great one. The other, if you're on TikTok in particular, you want your videos to either be under 20 seconds or over a minute. Under 20 seconds, it's easier to keep engagement. Over a minute, TikTok will literally boost your post if it goes over 1 minute, 1 second. Anytime you can add in, let's call it an Easter egg to your post. So you can just be holding a funny straw, or you have some weird thing in your hair that you never bring up. Just something that keeps people engaged. Also, like I said to you earlier, people want to get that payoff. So that's why we all watch those stupid coffee making videos where the person's just pouring an iced coffee and some milk. What's it going to look like? We gotta know. So anytime that you can do a video where you're even just in front of the camera, there's a guy, I wish I could remember his name. All he does is cut fruit. He just cuts fruit. And you watch the whole video because I got to see him cut the next pineapple. And he's given incredible content, which is why I stick around. But really, the pineapple is what keeps your brain engaged for whatever reason. I'm sure we'll find that it causes ADD for all of us, 10 years from now. But it's the reality. The other bit is if you're not going to have a Easter egg or something that you're doing, another trick is you just add a ton of movement. So a lot of my videos, I'm starting over here, and now I'm going to move over here to the left. I'm walking around my house. I'm outside. I'm in the car. Even if I'm in the car, I'm going to move with my left hand to my right hand. I might move the camera up or down. Little things like that make it more engaging. And then another good one is just using that away language works so well. So not that toward language of 3 ways to get stuff, but away language, 3 ways to stop not having stuff. Makes people engage quite a bit. As much as I hate to say it, because I think on LinkedIn people do it and they do it wrong and they're kind of like jerks about it, but a controversial hook can go a long way. I just had a post recently where I said, I'm on a mission to kill the SDR role. Now, the reality is I'm not on a mission to make every SDR lose their job. That's what I'm sort of alluding to, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't think that we need to have that role and whatever. So I have comments of people that are arguing with me, going like, you want people to be out of work? What a jerk. And then that's causing people to comment on those comments, which is, again, creating more engagement on the post itself. And it's interesting, too, because you'll see people coming to your defense on things, which makes you want to keep doing the content as well. So an engaging hook like that makes a lot of sense. And then finally, I think what I'll leave here as my last trick is create the kind of posts that do well are the kind of hooks that could do well just general, but can do well, but in general, are going to be like, I did blank, so you don't have to, or I've done blank on blank times. Here's a learning. I've interviewed 1,000 people, sold $100 million, been on 100,000 calls, whatever. So if you sell some data software, you're like, I've looked through 10 billion lines of code. It's probably true, right? I've messed up. I lost $100,000, the last month, and here's how you cannot do it. And it's like something that you did that hurt your data and your provider could actually help them with. And I'll just I'll just put a caveat on the whole thing, which is, don't worry. You don't need to say this post sponsored by visualsalestips.com. We do leads, sales, and coaching. You don't need to. You don't need to say link in the bio. They know the links in the bio. Don't worry about it. I should probably just give the note about captions. Don't put a lot of stock in the captions. Don't freak out about them. All you want to do is you want to have a couple of captions that are semi-related to the videos. I might do a video on performance plans. I'll do performance plan, #PIP. And then a couple of hashtags that are the audience you want. So I'll just be like AE, #VP of sales, #CEO, #owner. That's it. So don't get crazy with it.
Dude, full of tactical. I see Matt, I have a shared Notion file and he's just jamming on notes. I think you made him especially giddy when you said share the tools and the hacks and the keyboard shortcuts. Cause like this guy has got a world full of them. Matt, I think your content roadmap for the next 6 months just got to place your strengths.
So I have two things on my screen right now. I have our shared notes file from this discussion and my shared notes file for all the reels that I'm going to shoot on Tuesday. And I have 17 of them so far that I've jotted down during this conversation. Go. So rock and roll.
Nice, man. You're welcome.
Johnny knows me. Johnny knows the way to my heart.
Yeah.
So far.
Mike, I love it. So much of what you shared today has been both. You just have a knack for striking the balance between the big picture why and then right down to the tactical. It's like no shock that your content's so engaging. I'd love to hear, like, you've clearly put a lot of time and effort into this. Let's zoom out. One of the things that attracts our audience to us and a big part of our culture and tribe at SaaS Academy is what we call the integrated life. That number one, work is something to be enjoyed and something that builds you, the person, and that we win in every area of life. We don't just win in our professional career. So I'd love to just kind of zoom out to like, what's the why for you? You mentioned pickups. It sounds like you got a family. Like, why put all the time and effort into doing what you do at Official Sales Tips and publishing the content? Like, take us big picture.
Yeah, I mean, there's two answers to that. One is the real answer, and I think a lot of us don't realize that our why is the real answer. And I'll be vulnerable here to say that for whatever reason, I feel like that my love will come on the back of doing something great. And it needs to be deserved. It needs to be earned. Even though I know that's not true, I feel like all of us have some level of a chip on our shoulder to go like, we are working hard because we feel lesser than. And we typically find that high performers are motivated for two reasons. One, they're confident they can do it. And two, they're so scared that they can't. And that in between is what makes us do it. So the why in reality, as much as we're going to say is we want to insert whatever stupid mission statement is on your wall right now, your why is probably to feel loved. And I think that's the actual truth. Mm-hmm. But let's say what the why is that I tell in my head versus just the one that I think is reality. And that is, I really want everybody to feel so proud of themselves. And I want to be able to say that I've made an impact on people. Maybe that's selfish and I want to be able to sleep better at night to know that. But if I were to have a charity, a nonprofit, all the things I'm doing in my business to get more time back is not to go sit on the beach. That time is actually so I can spend more time actually taking on individual coaching clients, because I know the kind of impact you can make in someone's life, whether it be emotionally or even just confidence in the short term of like, you got this, you're going to make it through this time, or long term where that person now has the ability to hire a team of 10 people and grow their business. Like, this makes a real impact on actual human beings in their actual life. I know we're just talking about sales tips here. I get that we're talking about leadership, but I also know that when you get sales and you get leadership right, you can change your own life and a lot of the lives around you. So like, I can't tell you how much this is so near and dear to me. I think the ultimate bit, within my life is I want to be, I truly feel like for you to be the best husband, father, son, whatever are all the different things you could be, you need to just work on being the best version of yourself wherever that is. And so if I can take care of myself in the professional way, and as well as like all the things personally, hobbies or whatever else, health at some point here down the line, then I can actually be a better husband, a better father, or whatever. So it's not so much about I want to do things so my kids can point at them and go, Dad did that, he's a role model. I want to do things so that I can be the best version of myself, and everyone will just in general feel like they want to be a certain level of themselves, hopefully in the back of seeing me doing some hard things. That said, if I can coach them individually to make people actually be more proud of themselves, they're going to be better versions of themselves. And that's what I'm working on every day. Like, I hope you hear this passion, and I fucking love this stuff. Dude, sorry for the swearing.
No, it's yeah, 100%. It is contagious and inspiring, man. It's a huge part of what the culture we curate at SaaS Academy is being in that environment where we say all the time, like, you got to become the person that you needed in your darkest days. Like, that is a life.
Yes.
A life. Well, if you talk about reaching your full potential, it is that, hey, and that's part of the angle is to say, hey, why shoot content? Like, you 1 year ago needed you. Share that content. And so, yeah, I think it's just, you're doing a great job leading from the front, and really appreciate you coming. Just like you shared so generously on the podcast here. Do me a favor. If someone's not already following you, tell us where the listeners can find you.
Too easy. Anywhere you want at Official Sales Tips. So at Official Sales Tips or at Official Sales Leader Tips on TikTok. Otherwise at Official Sales Tips. Hit me up and let's get connected. On LinkedIn, it's Mike Manzi 7. If you know the link, if you know, you know.
Cool. Awesome. We'll link it up. Mike, thanks so much for being generous with your time. Keep doing what you're doing. We'll be following along, and enjoy the chance to jam with you today.
Thank you so much. Let's go.